Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our Power Insight Series 5th. And today we have our guest, squadron leader Tulika Rani.
Welcome, Tulika ma'am.
Hello, good evening. Thank you so much for providing me this platform today.
Okay,
Glad to be
welcome.
amongst you all.
Yeah. Welcome, Tulika.
It's our pleasure, ma'am.
Yes. Our pleasure. So, Tulika is a multifaceted personality, a retired Air Force officer, mountaineer, writer, research scholar, and motivational speaker. She has done 23 mountaineering and trekking expeditions all over the world. She is the first woman from UP to climb Mount Everest, first Indian woman to climb Asia's highest volcano, Mount Damawand in Iran. She has also successfully climbed a virgin peak in Himachal Pradesh.
Scholar leader Tulika Rani is also recipient of Lakshmi Bai Veerta Puraskar by UP government, FICCI Global Women Award, Pratibha Women's Achiever Award, Hindustan Times Women's Award, Delhi Ratna and Merit Ratna. She is also pursuing her PhD on Sherpas in Nepal. She is also an advisory board member of Indian Mountaineering Adventure Forum and is a brand ambassador of Gangotri Resources Development Society, which provides free competitive coaching to underprivileged girls. She's also been an outdoor training instructor in Air Force Academy, where she's trained around 1,500 cadets, including the first 3 women fighter pilots of India. Thank you so much, ma'am, for having coming here and giving us this opportunity to speak to you.
My pleasure.
So, ma'am, I would like to begin our session by asking you, tell us how you got attracted to the mountains. You have started your journey as a mountaineer, and in this journey, what were the challenges that you faced physically, emotionally, and even financially? It's not been an easy ride for you.
Yes. The attraction towards mountains was always there right from the childhood. So it basically started with my affinity to nature because I have been a child of nature. And when I was a kid, I used to look at the sunsets and sunrises every morning and evening. And then I used to talk to trees, flowers, and birds. So these were my companions. Somebody asked me, who are your friends? So generally kids take a number of kids' names as their friends. But at that time also my answer was that I have 3 friends, God, nature, and myself. So nature has always been one of my companions. So I suppose it was quite natural for me to be attracted towards mountains. And fortunately, I just got an opportunity because Indian Air Force had conceived the plan to send its women officers to Mount Everest. The plan was conceived in 2009 and the expedition was scheduled in 2011. So my journey into adventure sports started with Indian Air Force, and I'm quite thankful for that because in civil life, it is slightly difficult. You have more opportunities while being in armed forces to get into sports. So that is how my journey started. And initial 5 expeditions I did with the Indian Air Force as a member of the Air Force climbing team. I was also fortunate to do my basic adventure course and the advanced mountaineering course from HMI Darjeeling. And that was also provided by Indian Air Force. So yes, the journey was initiated as a part of the IF. But later on, as you see that when a plant is planted, a seed is planted, and thereafter you grow branches. So the seed was planted by IF, and I took care to nurture it. And I had my own branches sprouting in all directions thereafter. So it got into my blood, the mountaineering. And coming to now the challenges in terms of economics, also mentally and physically, yes, I would admit that mountaineering is a very expensive sport. So it takes lakhs and lakhs at times if you want to climb big mountains. So the initial expeditions of mine, the 5 expeditions, they were sponsored by the Indian Air Force. The whole team, rather, it was sponsored. But later on, out of my 23 mountaineering and trekking expeditions, if you exclude those 5 initial ones, the rest of the expeditions I have sponsored on my own from my savings, excluding 2, which were sponsored by Amar Ujala Foundation. So I would like to take this opportunity to place my thanks to the Amar Ujala Foundation also. And otherwise, I used to earn and perhaps splurge on climbing, because I always feel that money is a resource to bring you contentment and happiness. So yes, we need
Absolutely.
to save for some contingency, but if it is not providing you that contentment in life, you just don't need to put it in bank. So that has been my philosophy. Physically, since I was in Indian Air Force, already I had a basic foundation of physical fitness. But later on, I built upon it. I searched what was required to be a mountaineer in terms of physical fitness. Because if you want to be a marathoner, that physical training would be different. If you want to go for sprints, it would entail different physical training. For mountaineering, the training is altogether different. So I searched on internet, I asked people who had been into it, and I just went in search of it as to what would I require to climb mountains successfully. And so I did everything in terms of endurance training, stretching, as well as flexibility. So it was a combination of all physical fitness experiences. Emotionally and mentally, it is a mix of years and years of training your mind that you can perform on that one day, or you can perform on that one expedition. So I took care to nurture my emotional thoughts in the right direction and inhaling the positive energy from all around and blocking the negative thoughts.
Nice, nice. Nice to know your journey, Tulika. Now, if I ask you, Tulika, before joining forces and then a mountaineer, how you see yourself now and how you evolved over the years?
Indian Air Force has brought a lot of transformation in me, as it would do to anybody. Because armed forces, as we know, that it is not just a job, it is a way of life.
True.
It transforms somebody from just being a mere girl or boy to being an officer or a soldier.
Absolutely.
So that is the transformation that I also underwent during my training in the academy as a cadet. And I have learned from Air Force the team spirit, also the leadership qualities, that you need to take initiative if there is a problem. Cribbing is not going to solve it, and nothing is going to happen if you just keep on complaining about circumstances in life. So I learned that you need to take initiative. Also, I had joined armed forces because physical fitness had a huge attraction for me. And I always wanted to be amongst fit, young, dynamic people. And I can say with conviction that armed forces people remain young to the core all their lives, irrespective of their age. And
Very
the physical
true.
fitness thing, even after they retire, they do not leave it because it gets embedded in their system. So these were few qualities that I learned from being in armed forces, and the cohesiveness amongst various units that makes a group and transforms that group into a team. So that is what Indian Air Force taught me. And before I was just a girl, I would say, with aspirations, dreams, determination, armed forces transformed all those qualities into reality, into action, and also taught me how to inspire others, how to bring out the best in other people. And I also got an opportunity, thankfully, to put this in practice as an instructor in the Air Force Academy. I'm quite grateful that I got that opportunity, and I saw that transformation of other people, other young children into officers. So that was the best time of my career, I would say. And as a mountaineer, see, mountaineering taught me perseverance. Once you look at the mountain, the first glimpse of a mountain teaches you how small you are. So it taught me humility, because as an officer or as somebody in our lives, when we are on the plains, we tend to have an inflated ego. All of us are very prone to it. It is a natural human reaction. But when you are faced with the force of nature, be it in terms of mountains or winds or anything, you just realize that you're nothing. that a stroke of wind, a gust of wind can sweep you off the face of this earth. That amount of snow, if the avalanche comes, you can be buried under snow. So all these small things that we take for granted, human life is just can go in a flicker. So we shall be very grateful that we are a component of nature, not here to conquer it, but to live in harmony. So that is what mountaineering taught me. Also, it exposed in front of me my own weaknesses, because as human beings, we tend to have a huge thing about our successes, our strengths, but we tend to ignore our weaknesses. And even if we know it, we don't rather like to accept them. But mountaineering taught me how to learn about my weaknesses, how to work on them, accept it, and improve them. So that's how I see the transformation by Indian Air Force as well as the mountains.
Ma'am, you have mentioned in your interviews and in your journey that when you were on the Mount Everest and there's a point that your foot started paining a lot, it felt like it was an ice slab and there was a danger of frostbite. You still continued for 17 hours, and it was a time when you said that your mind had to tell your body move, and ultimately it was a fight between mind and body. It was mind over body. So please share what was those powerful thoughts at that moment that helped you conquer Everest and come out as victorious.
As I earlier said, that your performance, be it physical or be it mental, be it in mountains or be it in your exam room, it does not come in a day. It is the culmination of years and years of persistent, sustained training. So I had trained my mind for that particular moment itself for last 3 years, actually. So when I was preparing for Everest, first as a member of the IAF team, and later on in 2012, for my individual expedition, the second attempt that I climbed successfully in. So when I was running, when I was in planes and preparing for the Everest expedition, during running, I used to imagine climbing Everest. And whatever goal I have decided, perhaps say 20 kilometers, I used to run 20 kilometers on alternate days. So I would dissect those 20 kilometers into small number, say 5 kilometers each, symbolizing each camp on Mount Everest. And then I would imagine that I'm climbing. So after 5 kilometers, you start aching, your legs start aching, that lactic acid builds up and you feel that, okay, I should give up now. But then I would remind, no, I'm just at camp 1. There's still a lot to go. So you need to continue. And then 2, 3, 4, like this, I would climb camp 4. Then I would go for summit. While running, I would imagine this. When I have reached the summit, say 20 kilometers is finished, then I would give a little bit of extra push for contingency. So I would say, okay, now, when you are drained of energy, you have nothing left in you. Now, how much you can do? So you will again do 1 kilometer extra. So this trains my mind to persist in emergency conditions. So this training, and also, you have to train yourself to think that you are not going to give up till the time you reach your goal. So this philosophy of life can be applied in any field, in any goal that you're trying to achieve, that I'm not going to give up despite setbacks, despite obstacles and difficulties. So that training, I suppose, helped me in good stead. When I was in immense pain during the summit climb, and I took a calculative decision, actually. I won't advocate that you go against nature, that if you're in an emergency condition, persist and continue climbing. No, I won't say that. You have to analyze the situation, calculate if the risk is worth it, and you can take it. Thereafter, you have to continue. So this debate always persists in mountaineering, when to return and when to push your limits. It is totally up to the individual climber. And I thought that I could do this at that particular time, took that risk. Pain, this capacity to endure pain, I had inculcated in myself over the years. So I suppose when I was actually faced with it, I persisted. When I used to run, I used to put 3 kgs weight each in my legs. And sometimes it used to bruise my legs. So there are still the scar marks, but I won't stop running because of that. It would rub my skin, it would peel off the skin, it would keep rubbing on each step, but I would continue running. So that is how I had trained myself, and that, I suppose, paid dividends when I was on the actual climb.
Wow, wonderful, Tulika. So you actually did physical training, and side by side you were training your mind too. Excellent. So, Tulika, mountaineering is a very challenging sport. So how does it resonate with your day-to-day life challenges? And how has mountaineering molded you to deal with life challenges?
Like mountaineering, every goal, when you initially set your eyes at it, seems very huge. So when I looked at Mount Everest from the base camp, I was like, oh God, it's so massive. And I just looked like a speck of dust. So am I actually capable of doing it despite 3 years of training? And this is the same situation when you set a huge goal in your life. It can be in any field. But despite that initial apprehension, you have to at least take the first step. And once you have initiated the task, train yourself to continue despite whatever setbacks and obstacles. It happens the same in mountaineering also. Sometimes the avalanche comes and the entire route gets washed off. Sometimes you have reached a particular height on the adverse weather, you have to come back down to the base camp. And again, you have to climb the entire length and the entire altitude. So this happens in life also, many a times. Perhaps you may have started and reached intermediate level in your task, but suddenly something happens, some adverse condition, and you reached the 0 level. Now you have to again begin from the ground. So that thing, I think I learned from the Everest. And also, mountains have taught me to just persist in any kind of condition. Nowadays, I do not leave any task incomplete. So whatever comes, I take it, okay, this day was bad. Perhaps I could not achieve my task, my goal of today, but tomorrow I'll do it better. And every morning is a new morning. So every morning when you wake up, you look at the weather, okay, now fine. Today is a fine weather. And today I go on climbing. Similarly, when I'm down in the plains, I create that good weather in my mind every morning. I wake up in the morning, I smile at myself, I pay gratitude to God for everything He has given me. I think of something positive, I create a task for myself, and I again look at smile that, okay, today is a good day, I'll go after it. So this is how I think mountaineering and my day-to-day activity symbolizes each other.
Great. I mean, you have 23 mountaineering expeditions to your credit, you know. Which one has been the most valuable one and which has changed your perception towards life?
Each one has taught me something, something very precious. And if I recall my first expedition to Mount Stoke Kangri in Leh, I was not a very good climber at that time. And not because I was physically not up to it, but I would say that cultivating that aptitude for climbing, the way you have aptitude for flying, similarly, you need to have that attitude and aptitude for climbing also. So that takes some time, I suppose. In my case, yes, I did successfully climb the first peak, but perhaps I was not still up to those challenges that mountaineering brought. So that was a little difficult for me, but yes, I persisted and I climbed. Thereafter, I learned that reaching your goal after a hard struggle, you know, it brings so much of contentment. So that kept me going. And I got addicted to that feeling, working very hard for a long time, sustained efforts, and under all circumstances, under all kinds of physical and mental, emotional pain, thinking that one day it will bring me results. And that feeling of attaining your goal, that feeling of standing on the top of mountain is just indescribable. So that is how I think I continued. And one expedition that changed my perception was Mount Kamet. That is in Garhwal. We did it in 2009. So ours was a very competent team, and we were quite close to the summit, I would say. Some of the team members had summited, the group 1. I, in group 2, along with other members, we were just one camp below the summit. And we were hoping that next day we would just go for the summit camp. And in the night itself, I suppose we would go for this summit. So it was just 1.5 day difference between us and the top. But the next day, rather than going up, we were advised to go down because the weather turned bad. So the leader instructed us to go down. And we had to retreat in snow blizzard conditions for 6 hours. It was like life and death situation. At that time, there was a thought in my mind. It was so bad that living was actually difficult. And I thought that if I just open up my carabiner, I disconnect myself from the rope and I just fall down in the valley, it would be so soothing. So that was a thought that came in my mind, because just taking one step in that condition, when the snow was just coming into your face from all direction, the wind is so high, your fingers are numb, you're just struggling to take each step, and you don't know when and how it will end. So these kind of conditions, but you persist because there's something in your mind that tells you, no, you just can't give up. However miserable you are feeling right now, you just cannot give up. You have to take the next step. So that lesson I learned from that expedition. In life also, many times, it will be similar conditions when you will be utterly miserable in uncomfortable situations, and you will feel that giving up is so much better, so much comfortable, but no, you just can't give up. So that is one thing which just changed my attitude towards life and mountaineering also. After that, I just started enjoying difficulties and challenges. So now if something comes, okay, strong wind, okay, snow is coming, and I will like, okay, I know. So let it come, we will see. So then that tussle with the challenges and with my own strength, it just became enjoyable. So that was what, yeah.
But often we see the icing on the cake, and what is below it is missing. It's not seen visibly. For you, I have read, and from my knowledge, that you took you 2 years plus training for Everest, and you put in 25 lakh rupees of your own, your savings and from your family. And when you came down, for some time, there was no acknowledgement from anyone. Nobody, even acknowledged you or sponsored you or helped you out in any which way. How was it? Was it overwhelming, and how did you deal with it at that point of time? Because it can break one's spirit and really discourage them. So how did you overcome that, and how did you deal with those thoughts?
First of all, the reason of me climbing Everest was not acknowledgement from anybody. So in my life, the purpose of doing a walk has always been my contentment.
Of course, I understand that, but still, it's not a small thing. Not you're the first woman from Uttar Pradesh to.
Yes. So there are all sorts of people in this world. So some would discourage you, some would underplay your achievements. While there would be some, though few, but there will be some who would encourage you quietly, perhaps in their own ways. So while I dealt with the previous kind of people who did not acknowledge me, or people who just said, okay, now you have got frostbite. So was it really worth climbing Mount Everest? Because now perhaps you will have your fingers, your toes amputated. So yes, there were all sorts of comments, but I would still say this, that I focused my energy more on constructive things. So while I was in a hospital for 3 months, because I had frostbite in my toes, it was quite bad, I wrote my book on Mount Everest while being in the hospital. So I have this kind of, tendency to cut myself off from the negative atmosphere or anything negative that is coming my way, and focus more on the positive things. What can I do? See, I cannot change people's perceptions, and I cannot change their reactions. What I can do is to just be indifferent to it, distance myself from those kind of people, and look for like-minded people, and whatever is in my capacity, focus on doing that. So I would say that yes, there were umpteen number of people who also supported me and who also praised me. There was one person, I didn't know him, he was just a stranger, but he came looking for me. He had read in a newspaper about me, And he came looking for me to meet me just after reading that story. So these kind of people also were there who appreciated just being strangers. I'm still in touch with him. When I go to Bangalore, I still go to his house and meet his family. So life has been kind enough to bless me with these kind of instances also. And today I feel that whoever, see, people have their priorities. So somebody has money as their priority. Somebody has material success as their priority. And perhaps they don't understand as to why somebody would waste a lot of money, a lot of time of his or her life on climbing a mountain. So that's all right. See, it's their perspective. And my perspective of living a life is quite different. And while I disagree with them, or they disagree with me rather, I don't have any disrespect towards their kind of life. And I just feel that, okay, they should let me be. But there are enough number of people who encourage you and who acknowledge you. So it should not bother you as to who is discouraging, who is encouraging. One should have gratitude for everything that is coming in life. And you have the capability of turning everything into a positive reaction and positive outcome. So take the negative, take it through your own system, which is very strong. And when it comes out, it should be something constructive. So that has been my philosophy.
Absolutely, ma'am. And I mean, it is very, very nice. And it's amazing how you use that time to write a book. I mean, that is just shows your spirit and your attitude, which is fantastic. I would like to take a question from the audience who's watching us live. The question is, ma'am, not everyone gets a start platform from an institution like Indian Air Force to do basic mountaineering and advanced mountaineering. For a person from civil background, it is expensive adventure sport. What in your suggestions, what is your suggestion to take up this sport and to develop it as a career?
To start with, I suppose you have to have some kind of savings. If you're working, then you have to save money. The basic and advanced mountaineering courses, I suppose now in HMI and NIM, these are the two premier institutions in India. It costs you approximately 5,000 rupees for 28 days. Wow. So it is quite subsidized, I would say.
Yes, yes.
And one can, I suppose, if you have the will, if you have the determination and inclination to start in this direction, you can save money, because initially everything needs some kind of investment. So for financial front, I suppose that would suffice. Later on, when you are done with your courses, you can do your treks also. You can start your own adventure agency. Nowadays, it is the blooming business in India, and a lot of passionate people who do not want to go into corporate or the government jobs of 9 to 5, they are getting into adventure sports. So you can start your own adventure club, an adventure agency, a tours and travel agency, and then you can publicize yourself. Because today, the age is of digital media, and it is a blessing, I suppose, because you have the reach to a vast audience, a large number of people at the same time without much effort. So that way you can publicize yourself. And first of all, perhaps you can start with your own small group of friends, then showcase it that yes, you can organize treks and expeditions, then people will come. It is a very heartening scenario that in today's time of India, a lot of people are coming from their corporate job into adventure activities. Even if they're not taking it as a career, they're quite interested in taking some time off from their busy schedule and spend that time in the lap of nature. So you will not have any dearth of it. Another option as a career in adventure sports is in the adventure institutes themselves. So there are some private institutions as well as the major premier institutions, as I just told, HMI in Darjeeling, NIM in Uttarakhand, Abhivas in Manali. There is one coming up in Arunachal Pradesh, and I suppose there is one in Sikkim also. So you have all these information on internet in today's times. So you have resource people also. So if you actually wish to make it big in adventure industry, you can do it. Yes, the big expeditions do require a lot of money, but then you can find sponsors. If you are good at networking, I suppose you can find sponsors too. A lot of people are doing it today.
Right. Suman ma'am.
Okay, am I audible?
Yes, yes, you're audible.
Okay, okay. Because there is an internet issue here. So, Tulika, I would like to ask you, generally it is said there is a woman behind a successful man. Who is behind this successful woman? Who supported you in your success journey and whom you want to pay your gratitude to?
It would be my mother, because she has been my biggest inspiration, and she has always been there when I failed. And I have failed enough number of times to be labeled a failure initially, but she has never left my side. Yes, she has advised me as to where is the scope for improvement in my attempt, in my efforts. See, she has taught me one thing: never to blame the external circumstances for your failures. So it is always within you. So if you actually look honestly within your heart, and you analyze your efforts, you will always find that you can do better. So my mom has always taught me that go after your dreams, do not give up. There might be times when you are frustrated, you are dejected, when the whole world also puts you in the dustbin, says that you are useless, worthless. Perhaps you yourself start feeling it. But this is the time when you have to be the most, the strongest person in your life. So that is how she has encouraged me to walk in my life constantly, telling me that failures are just a part of the journey of life. So you don't have to stop at failures until you convert it into a success story. So I would give the gratitude of whatever I am today to my mother and all of my family members. They are quite supportive, never forced me into a conventional kind of a mold of this society, have always given me the freedom to be myself, choose an unconventional path, be it my career of joining armed forces or adventure sports. So their support has been the rock of my life, I would say.
Wow. So you are associated with many NGOs and you're contributing and shaping others' lives, Share a little about this with us. Tell us how you're contributing to, mountaineering and how are you helping other people in this field.
See, I always felt that you may start as an individual in your quest to success, but ultimately it does not remain confined to just an individual story, because anything that you do has an impact on the larger society. As an officer, when I did something, it had an impact and the total bearing on women officers and officer also. Apart from being a woman officer, I was first and foremost an officer of Indian Air Force. So I was representing my organization when I went outside to climb in Iran, Russia, Africa. I was representing my nation. So you may have your individual identity, but you also have a larger identity connected with you, of your organization, of your society, of the place that you come from, of your nation, of your gender. So I realized that that responsibility is there. And whatever action we take in our lives, it has to be thought of. You need to consider what impact, what message it will give to the larger society, how people will perceive it, what repercussions or benefits it will lead to other sections of society. So in that fashion, whenever I took a decision, I thought of all these things. And I also had this realization that perhaps I am quite fortunate to be born in a good family, to have supportive people, but not everybody might have these kind of resources. Though I've had my struggles, but still I feel myself quite blessed. There are people who are in lesser fortunate conditions. So I wanted to support them, and that is why I joined all these NGOs. As you have taken the name of GRDS, these people approached me themselves to be a brand ambassador, and I considered to it, because I thought when they told me that they are going to give free competitive coaching to the girl students, so that was something which was quite near to my heart. Now, education can change your life. Education can inform you about your rights, about how to take a stand for your own things in life, and also it empowers you in multiple ways. So that is one thing which I do. Another is the GVC, Global Village Connections, in which again I am associated in education. They have made me the Vice President of Education at the national level. And because education, again, as we were talking about, education has multiple facets. It could be physical education, it could be the theoretical education, the practical education, also education to be creative, to bring out that innovative mindset in today's youth so that they can find the solutions to the problems of their nation, their society, as well as the entire humanity. We have a lot of problems in today's times, I would say challenges. Climate change is one of them. The moral values in education system is one challenge that we need to look into. There is a lot of requirement of that. Also, the need to build a community feeling in the students in today's times when we are in nuclear families mostly. So that is another thing. So I thought that yes, it will again provide me a wider connect to people, and I will be able to make a positive difference in people's life. So that is the motto of my life now, that anything I do, whether my achievement, my failure, or my action, it is just not limited to me. It will have implications for the larger society. If I achieve something, it will be an achievement of women. So that I always keep in mind. And if my life can be an inspiration for somebody, if my actions and a little bit of my support, be it through financial help or my writings or my words or my actions, in any way that I can give back to the society, it is my duty. And that is what I'm trying to do a little bit in my own capacity.
On that note, we have a small question from an audience, Sumit Sharma, Wing Commander Sumit Sharma. He says, ma'am, amazing feat all the way. It is such a great success story. Why don't you write a book? So you have written one book on Everest, as you said. Tell us a little about that and what are your plans for more books?
Thank you, sir, for appreciation. And yes, I did pen down a book on my Everest climb. It was not just the narration of the Everest, but it also encompassed the story of the people of that region, Solukhumbu. As Sherpas, they assist the climbers in traditional style of climbing, but these people also have a story that needs to be told. So while I was talking to my Sherpa, I got into these socio-economic and cultural aspects of their life, mountaineering as a commercial activity, what impacts it had on their socio-economic and cultural facets of their lives. So I included all these subjects in my book. At that time, I could not publish it because somehow the publisher said that nowadays nobody reads adventure kind of books. So maybe I'm quite hopeful that I get a publisher now. The book is in the ready form, and if I get a publisher to publish it, this would see the light of the day. In addition to it, I have been continuously writing articles and research papers. So they have been published in various newspapers and journals, and they are there for everybody to read. Also, I'm doing my PhD on Sherpas of Nepal. So this is again related to mountaineering, and I intend to again turn my thesis into a book. So now I hope that I would be able to find a publisher to publish it, and I would continue my efforts to write. Writing is my another hobby. So despite the number of publications that I have on my name, I keep on writing because that gives me some kind of contentment. And also, when these articles are published and people read it, it is again a way to empower others, to trigger a thought process in the larger section of society. Because books has had a very wide impact on my life itself. Whenever I had this philosophy of my life, I read Ayn Rand a lot. I read Premchand. I read, in my formative years, I read Rabindranath Tagore. So all these authors had a very huge impact on my personality and my thinking process. And I think that we can empower somebody and perhaps give a consolation kind of thought to someone else, indirectly also through our writing. So yes, I am into the process, and I hope that I would be able to do it on a larger scale later on.
Yeah, we wish you more power for publishing your book, and you inspire many minds through your books. So Tulika, now you have very amazing experiences in this journey of your adventurous life. So what precious lessons would you like to share with youth?
I would say recognize yourself. because everything that happens in this world starts with a thought. You know, everything starts with an idea, and youth are known to have very creative, very out of the box, innovative ideas. So do not think that any idea is silly, that any question is a silly one, that perhaps it will not work. If you have conviction in your ideas, your thoughts, your dreams, go after them. Despite initial opposition, see, change does not come very soon. You know, there is a law of inertia, as people must have read in physics. So if something is in a static position and you want to push it and bring it into motion, it will take a little bit of effort. There will always be resistance. So understand that these are normal, natural laws of nature. So there will be natural opposition to the changes that you want to bring in your life as well as in the society. So persist, and you also know that once that motion has been set in, it will gather momentum. So have that faith in the laws of nature. Observe nature all around. Whenever you need to seek any kind of lessons, whether it is consolation when you are down, go to nature, it will give you the answers. If you are happy, you have achieved something, go there, it will tell you how to be humble. Like a tree laden with fruits, you have to be humble. But if you are just struggling to make something in your life, look at a seed. It has the power, just a tiny seed, has the power to tear apart the soil and come up and sprout branches and sprout leaves. So you have to be like that. You are also a part of nature. You have all that energy within you. So despite anything, if you feel that you can do something, do not let anything deter you. No, gather all your strength and just go after it. It will happen. Persistence really pays dividends in life. This is again the law. If you persist, you will have it. As a child, when you cried for your mother's milk or perhaps for food, when you persisted, you got it. When you grow up, do not forget that lesson. Keep on doing your efforts and it will happen.
Thank you, Tulika, for such inspiring words and igniting minds of people through our show. Thanks for joining us. And really, we are very grateful for your insights you share with us today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for your time, and thank you so much for sharing your story. You truly are an inspiration to many, ma'am. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you so much. Good day.
Right. Good day. Bye-bye.